Hello, this is Metacast Behind the Scenes podcast, and I'm your host, Ilya Bezdilev.
And I'm Arnab Deka.
We are co-founders of Metacast, a podcast app like no other, the podcast app that helps you turn podcasts into knowledge. And this podcast, we talk about how we build the app and the challenges we face and the successes we achieve and all that goes in between.
And if you're not listening to this episode in Metacast, download it and listen to it there and you'll see the difference right away.
You will be surprised if you're using some other app in a positive way. It's almost guaranteed, I think. Otherwise, why would we be working on this?
So we used to, I think the format for this podcast, we used to usually start with like a segment on what have we changed recently in the app, what have we introduced. And then we have like a focus part of the episode. And then we go with our recommendations. I think we've changed that recently. This is more like a maintenance kind of announcement. We have weekly updates for what we're working on, what are the things we're delivering and the challenges. So you can find those same episodes in this podcast, but we're not going to talk about all that in this episode.
Actually, let's talk a little bit about that thing, because we never actually discussed that. So we've done 3 weekly updates at this point. So basically what happens is every Tuesday, you and I meet together for usually about 2 hours, sometimes longer. And we basically discuss everything that we need to discuss. And we do code pairing sessions. Sometimes we do some operational things together. Yeah, so basically whatever needs to be done, we do it in those couple of hours.
And the rest of the week is we basically work on our own, except for like PR reviews and stuff, we don't talk.
Right, yeah. Except if we need to talk urgently, like if we need to do some pairing together.
Like LLM bots from episode 67. Go listen to that if you want to hear one of those conversations.
Oh my God, that thing is still ongoing. But anyway, so we had this idea, why don't we record stand-up? Up to 10 minutes, no longer than 10 minutes, every week of what we worked on last week, what we're working on next week. And it sort of follows the Scrum sort of methodology in a way, right? So like, Arnab, what you worked on? Arnab, what are you working on next? Well, I guess we don't discuss the blockers. We can discuss them, but we don't have a separate section for that. So what have been your experience recording this? Like, how do you feel about publishing those episodes?
Well, first of all, it's super quick because we do set a timer and make sure we get done in like 10 minutes. And I wasn't sure in the beginning how they'll turn out, but now that I've listened to 2 or 3 of them, first of all, you publish it almost immediately. We record it and you do maybe very minor edits. I almost find like by the end of the day, it's out. So it's super quick, unlike these episodes where, for example, we're recording today on May 7th. This will maybe come out in about a week. And the second thing, I've found them very fun in a way, both to record and to listen to. I don't know about other listeners. Give us feedback if you don't think they're fun. But I've been enjoying them, both recording and listening.
I think part of what makes them fun is the timer, especially when we start to run out of time and start to rush to meet the time constraint. It's kind of fun. I also like listening to them. They are very light, but also very structured because we do plan basically every single thing that we want to talk about a few minutes before we talk about that. So it goes really well. It's all structured and we don't veer off on tangents usually. Yeah, and like you said, so basically we finish the recording, I download the files, I edit them in Descript very quickly and publish them right away. Because we don't do any of those custom episode covers, there are no show notes, no chapters, none of that, right? All of that is generated automatically. It takes me maybe an hour to do the whole thing, maybe even less. Usually the next day I also listen to it again in Metacast, and I usually enjoy the flow of how it goes. What I like about that is we are able to be transparent with our users, and also they are very short, right? It's not difficult to find 10 minutes to listen to those episodes. And some users on Reddit, God bless them, they've been asking us for many things. And I think that kind of transparency gives us an avenue to give them an insight into what we're working on, why we are working on this, what challenges we face. Like we talked about the upgrade hell that we had, like, and stuff like that, right? That they wouldn't know about unless we actually told them about that.
Yeah. And ultimately, like coming back to our Amazon roots, earn trust from customers by telling them exactly what is going on behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. And so you can find those episodes in the same podcast feed. I think every one of them is max 11 minutes, but they're usually less than 10 minutes. They're pretty quick. And we won't be doing those kind of app updates in these longer episodes anymore. So in that spirit of like, I think keeping to a topic and being bound to time, what are we going to talk about today, Ilya?
So we have just launched a bunch of things under the same umbrella. So we've made sharing of podcasts and episodes a lot easier from the app. And we'll talk about basically the whole thing. What is the actual experience that we've launched? So you will basically gain an insight into our product and design thinking. Then we will talk about kind of the problem, why we did this, what even prompted us to do that. And we also talk about some of the technical details that went in there. So we'll try to stick to this one topic.
And I think this started with, people may remember that we had Jenny working with us from 2023 till 2024, almost the end of it. She was working with us. And then there's an episode about it if you want to go hear more details. She's still one of our beta testers. And so we were showing her the new URLs and how they work. And she asked, hey, you should talk about this. And you should even maybe do a blog post about why you're doing this and all that. So I guess this is the start of it.
Yeah. And this whole project was so complicated, I think, because of just so many like different things that we had to change across different systems and all that.
Yeah. And we knew for the last 6 months or so that we, at some point, we want to improve all this sharing and all that. There were lots of weirdnesses. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But we never, I think, had the focus or priority to like go fix it. And I think because we had to change a lot of other things anyway in the website, we were like, okay, let's just go do this right now.
So if the user on Reddit, SpongeBob4677, listens to this and he's like, why the hell are you working on new sharing experience if what you should be working on is, importing private RSS feeds or sorting the podcast or whatever is more important for them? How do you respond to this? Why did we choose to work on this, not on that?
So I think part of what drives you and me, and this has been true from day one, is that we like using the app a lot. We didn't have a better replacement for like the experience we were going for, so we decided to build it. And I think over the last few months, I don't know about you, I have been feeling that the sharing experience is broken. I think I told you a few weeks ago that I once opened a Metacast URL in my browser. From that point on, iOS will not open deep links in my app anymore. And I didn't know why. I did some research and eventually I figured out, I have to uninstall the app and reinstall it again. And then iOS learned. But that's like, you can't expect a user to do all that. Then there were other problems too. We'll go into it a little bit more. We depend on people discovering the app and finding out about it. And the way that people find out about it is SEO, Google search and all that. And so we needed to improve some stuff in there. So I would say that's why we prioritized it, because it was broken and we ourselves could not live with it anymore.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you said. I would also add some detail to the discoverability side. So while doing this project, we actually started to add more plugs for people to install the app when they land on our website. I did see sometimes I would share a podcast and there are no likes on the post, there are no comments, but there are 70 opens of that link. So people from my Telegram channel or from LinkedIn click the link, they land on the website. How do we capture those users? Obviously, it doesn't help the user who wants to import their private feeds or sort the podcast. But in a way, it's a virtuous cycle where the more people discover the app, the more people land in the app, the more viable this becomes as a business, the more we're able to invest in actually building the new features and not shut down.
And I think if we were making let's say sustainable amount of money, if we could have a third developer, no questions, that third developer would right now be working independently on the private podcast feature, which is our biggest requested feature right now. But now that all of the new UX for sharing is done, new URLs is done, I think I can go back to that starting Monday-ish. So what is the new experience for sharing?
In the app, you can share a podcast or an episode by just going to the info and tapping the share link and it shares. Previously, it would give you the name of the podcast or the name of the episode and the link. So now we've changed this. It only gives you the URL. We removed all of the other additional stuff. But the URL structure has changed. So previously, the URL structure was metacast.app/podcast/ and the mumbo jumbo 70 characters of incomprehensible junk.
Technical detail, that's a globally unique ID that we have in the URL that identifies the episode. which means nothing to a human being.
And some podcasts use URLs as GUID. So you basically get this like semi-readable junk for some other podcasts. It's junk regardless. It's not readable, not useful. So what was happening is like you have this link and you want to send it to somebody and you're like, so what is this link for again? It's like YouTube links, right? YouTube links are meaningless. You have to open the link to actually see what's in there. So right now our URLs are looking actually very good. It looks like metacast.app/podcast, and then there is like the slugified, basically the podcast name in lowercase and then the episode name in lowercase with some special IDs in there. It's a technical detail. But basically, like by looking at the link, you can tell exactly what that link is for. If you listen to that podcast, even if somebody sends you a link, you can still guess what it is for.
You know exactly what podcast and what episode you're talking about.
Yeah. If it says Joe Rogan Experience, you know it's Joe Rogan Experience. And then it probably says the name of the guest. And you can decide if you want to open it or not, right? It gives you more kind of freedom there. That is like probably the simplest of all things that we've done for this project, changing those links.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that's simple at all, because we had to introduce these short IDs in place of the long GUIDs, and that was a massive project on its own.
I think we've done it on the web app maybe like 2 months ago. I kind of forgot of all the pain because there was a lot of like backfield and all the stuff that we had to do to make it happen. That's right. So the other thing, if you share a segment from a transcript, so if you swipe right to left on the transcript, you can actually copy the text, and it also gives you a link. So that link will also be the new format. And it also has a start at parameter. If you click that link, it will open the app. You'll get dropped at the timestamp that you open it from.
To summarize, you now only get a URL. It's shorter than before. And that URL has all the context you would need before you open up the URL.
Right. And it also can be a deep link. Well, we had this before, but now it's even more meaningful, I think. So previously, if you tap that link, let's say from Messages or from WhatsApp or from Notes, it would open the app for you if the app is installed. And it had some challenges, so we changed it. So right now, if you tap this link on a mobile phone, it will always open the web page for that episode or that podcast in your browser.
Like Safari on iOS or Chrome or whatever on Android, yeah.
Right, yep. And in there is a big Open in Metacast button. The reason why you would want to actually use the browser, because some people asked us to like get access to the full transcript. For technical reasons mostly, it's just hard to do on a mobile app. At least right now, it's going to be a distraction for us.
It's not hard, but we haven't prioritized because we want to work on more user-requested features like sorting and private podcasts and all that.
Right. So we were telling people like just open the link in the browser and then you can get access to the entire transcript more easily. And it's actually probably more convenient than in the web app because you also have all of the browser sort of search tools at your disposal. You can copy it elsewhere, like put it into ChatGPT, do whatever you want with the transcript.
Actually, a couple of users told us recently, right? So now what they're doing is they're sharing it, opening it in the browser, copying the transcript, and then using ChatGPT with that to like do things.
Right. But now there is also a big Open in Metacast button that if you want to, you can tap on that button and it takes you back to the app. So that's especially helpful if somebody shared the link with you and it opens in the browser. You look at the episode. If you want to play it, you tap Open in the app.
So tell me about this Open in Metacast button. Like, how does it work if I'm on a mobile phone versus if I'm on a desktop, if I have the app installed or not installed? Yeah.
Here is where Arnab's genius comes in. Because like that idea that you had, we'll get to that in a second. If you have the app and you tap that button, it opens the app for you if you're on mobile phone. If you don't have the app, it shows you a page that has links to Google Play Store and Apple App Store where you can download the app. Then you come back to that page and you can again tap that Open in Metacast button and it opens it for you in the app that you now installed.
But this part was so sucky in our previous experience, right? Because we just had the Open in Metacast link. Like there was a Metacast link in there, but it used to just take you to the home page because the home page has those big like install buttons. But after that, you wouldn't probably remember to come back to this page and open it again and all that.
And you would never be able to actually open it from Safari because Safari would never open the app's links. So, but on the desktop, so let's say somebody sent you a link, you're in your computer, I don't know, in Slack, and it opens in your Chrome or Safari or Internet Explorer. If you click on that Open in Metacast button, it knows that you're on desktop and it shows you a QR code that you can scan. And then the same thing happens for mobile, right? If you have the app installed, it opens the app for you. For that episode, it even respects the start at. So it will even open the specific timestamp for you if this link includes the start at parameter. And if you don't have the app, it will show you the download links. So same thing. So that QR code, because that idea came from you, right? So I believe you had seen something similar somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it was a banking app that in the error page of the app, it's a web page that says, oh, you have to open this in the mobile app. And I think we got the idea from there that we should totally do this.
Yeah, and that's what we've done. It works like a charm. We tried to make QR code in like brand colors, but they were not always readable with like glare, so we made them like high contrast, so it's lesson learned. We had to do some extra change there. But yeah, that works really perfectly. So the other thing that works really, really well with the new experience, because we only share the link. If you are on the Apple ecosystem and you do AirDrop from your phone to your computer, the computer just opens the web page for you automatically. So previously, I think it would send you a text file, and you would have to like open the text file and remove the text file. It was not very helpful.
Just generally, like when you share iOS, you share just a URL, it fetches the metadata, like Open Graph data and all, some technical stuff behind the scenes about the URL and shows you all of that. So it makes the experience much nicer on iOS. On Android, actually, I use it for testing, right? It's been very nice too.
Yeah. And I think some of those apps like WhatsApp, for example, it's the same on both iOS and Android. It would fetch the image, it would fetch the title and all of that. I think iMessage is probably the winner here because they actually allow you to even play right in iMessage. I don't know who would do that, to be honest, because like why would you play like an hour-long episode in iMessage? And also it doesn't send the users to us unless you tap the button, but it's a nice touch. And we didn't have to do anything for it. It happened automatically, which was kind of surprising. The other thing that is sort of tangentially related, we've optimized our image processing pipeline. So now we compress the images. We also reduce call starts. I'm going to technical details. But basically, images are faster and smaller now. And what this means is when you share a link on social media or in a messenger, previously, the image sometimes timed out because we weren't able to provide, let's say, WhatsApp the image in a couple of seconds that it needs. Now it's near instant. It's a side effect of another project that we've done for optimization. And also we will, I think, backport this to the mobile app as well. So the images in the mobile app will also load faster now.
Yeah, that's already in our code. That change is already in our code. It'll be probably in the 1.2 release.
Yeah, 1.20. Yep.
So that's the new experience. And I think, Ilya, we should put a like side-by-side comparison of the two URLs in the blog post maybe that you're going to write anyway.
I think we should call it right in the episode cover.
Maybe in the episode cover, yeah, from this to this, yeah.
Right.
And we've talked about like some of the benefits, like, yeah, it's more compact, but yet more like meaningful, good for SEO. But I think we also found a few really weird problems with the way we were doing URLs. And that's the part I mentioned, like it was completely broken and we had to fix it.
I guess we can talk about our problems separately because like I think we had different problems. So the problem that I had was that, so first of all, if I shared link from the app and I put it into my notes and I want to open it in the browser to see the transcript, I tap that link, it always opens in the app. It's like impossible to tap the link and not open it in the app. Except if you go to Safari on the iPhone, you paste that link right into the browser URL bar, then it opens in the browser. But then there is no way you can actually launch the app from there. Because here's how it works. For both iOS and Android, you associate a domain and a certain path on that domain with your app. So let's say metacast.app domain is associated with the Metacast app. And also like /podcast, I think is a path that we associated. So whenever you tap that link that has this path, it always opens in the app. But Apple is smart. If you actually paste this link in the browser and you start using the website in the browser, to prevent you from like going back and forth between the app and the browser, it opens all the links in the browser. So let's say if I open the podcast page and it has a bunch of links to the episodes. So those links will not open in the app. They will open in the browser. So I think it makes sense. I remember like back in the day, Amazon would jump back and forth between Safari and the Amazon app and it was just so annoying. And you could never know what would happen. Like it was so unpredictable. I think Apple made it more predictable, but it made it easier in some way and harder in some other ways.
And I think another related problem here we found is, so for example, from the previous version of the app, if you shared a podcast, now it would copy the name of the podcast and the URL and you go put that in your notes. Like you mentioned, if you tap that in the notes app, it would open it in the app. You cannot open it in the browser. So naturally what you would do is you would depress that and say open in browser, which is great. Now it opens in browser. But what it also does is it tells iOS that I always want to open this in the browser and never in the app again. And I somehow, maybe a few weeks ago, I did this. I must have done this, and none of the deep links were ever working for me again. We could not figure out what the heck is going on. And then I did a lot of research and found out that, this is probably iOS learning that it should open these links in the browser, not in the app, even though we have like the app association and all that. What you have to do is uninstall the app and reinstall it again, and that tells iOS that, okay, open it in the app again. But no sane user should have to go through this. So we wanted like a clear way of always open it in the web app and always being able to open it in the app.
Yeah, and those links are notoriously hard to troubleshoot. It's not the first time we had issues with those links. And it's not the first time we spent probably like hours just chasing the wrong thing.
Yeah, and once, remember, we had to actually file a support ticket with Apple when we were first trying to launch this feature 6 months ago, maybe, the universal links. And they had to have a support engineer work with us to figure out how to see all this metadata and all that. So yeah, it was really complicated. And it's not just an Apple problem. We had another big problem on Android. How this works for both Android and iOS is in our website, like metacast.app, we have a special file for iOS and a special file for Android that tells that these paths or these URLs should be open in the app. And here is sort of like the ID of the app. We provide that. And correspondingly, the app has to be installed on the device. And the app also has to say like, if I get URLs of this kind of pattern for this domain, open it in the app. So it's kind of like a two-way handshake. If that works, then it opens inside the app. And that worked for iOS and some Android phones. Recently, what we found out is some Android devices, including my test device, which is a Samsung Galaxy, like from about a few years ago, it always tries to open all metacast.app links inside the app. For example, if somebody shared you like a Metacast blog post or the pricing page or the FAQ, and you tap that on your Android phone, it'll open it inside the app. And then the app is like, like I don't know what a blog post URL is, and it'll throw you like a error screen. And we have a lot of people telling us in Reddit as well as emails that the OPML import thing is not working in our app because the OPML import feature is not there. It's just a link to a web page inside the settings. We had to figure out like, okay, there's just no sane way of doing this. Our idea of separating it out so that we can reliably always open URLs in the browser versus in the app will handle this bug also.
So what was the technical solution that we've done to...
We separated out metacast.app from open.metacast.app as a subdomain. And now links for open.metacast.app will reliably open in the app if you have the app installed. And metacast.app links will always open in the browser.
Yeah, so basically we separated those concerns like entirely. So the open.metacast.app, there is no content on that website. It basically is just this shim to open links in the app through that open Metacast button, right? And the cool thing here, if users click on that link on their mobile phone and the app is installed, then actually the request is never sent to the site. It just always opens in the app. But if the request is sent to the site, then we just redirect it to a special page that has a QR code.
And like instructions on like how to install the app and then open that same URL again in the app.
Right. And the trick there is that on the metacast.app, where we have the podcast and episode pages that link the Open and Metacast app, it's on a separate domain. That's why it's able to trigger that flow where it takes you actually out of the website, right? Because if it was on the same domain, then it wouldn't work. So we had to split. I think we saw this used in other apps that do it on a separate domain.
I think Spotify has a open.spotify.
I think you're right. I think Spotify might be doing this, yeah.
Cool. So yeah, that avoids all the wonkiness, bizarreness. And along with that, we basically produce much better URLs that also help with our discovery of the app itself. So win-win all around.
Yeah, and it's been pretty significant change, I think, that touched basically all of our systems. I think we also had to do quite a bit of rework. Well, at least initially, I had to do quite a bit of rework when I was doing the original implementation of those URLs. Yeah, but I think now it's stable and it works and it's really good.
Yeah. And I would say, like, for the amount of complexity that this was, starting from figuring out how to provide like short IDs that are unique enough, but are short enough, and provide these nice URLs, to now, like, basically we've completed a long arc of work that needed to be done at some point anyway, but makes the whole experience much better. One thing I would say, a little bit of a retrospective, I guess, on this is, in Amazon, this kind of a project, just imagine how long it would take you to launch this kind of a project.
It would take you longer to plan than the time it took to launch it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have the benefit of being pretty small still. So we were like, okay, if shit breaks. Like, we figured out some sane steps of like, this is the order we'll launch things in, and that should work. Thankfully, it's been a day now and it is working.
There were two places this could go wrong. So the first place is when we introduced those URLs, we had to backfill everything. So we had like 2 million plus records in our database that we had to update. So we had to write special scripts, special functions to do that. If you made a mistake there, we could have corrupted some of our data.
That itself, there was a sequence of launching that, because not only do you have to backfill, you have to ensure that things that are getting updated while you're running the backfill also have this attribute. It doesn't overwrite or like change it or something like that.
Right. And also I think because when we update the data, it triggers some other changes. I think we had to temporarily disable some of those like extra updates so that we don't trigger a bunch of like 2 million other updates going on at the same time. Yeah, I think we had to temporarily change that. Also, we had to actually rebuild our BigQuery tables for analytics, because here's the interesting interdependence thing. We had a challenge with our BigQuery going out of proportion because of some of the decisions we made, and we kind of undid those decisions. But our database was just humongous. It was like 10 or 20 times larger than it was supposed to be in terms of its size and also the cost. So we used that opportunity of backfilling the short IDs and changing the analytics schema to drop a couple of tables, like the biggest tables, and redo them. It kind of triggered a bunch of things that, now that I think about this was actually a massive project. Like you said, if it was at Amazon, it would be like maybe no more than 3 or 4 people working on this, but they would be working on this for like 6 months.
Oh, at least 6 months. I would say this is more like a year-long project. I think because there were lots of risks in it too.
Yeah, I want to say we started working on this in like March, maybe February. I mean, and we didn't only work on this.
I know we started working on this at the end of February, because mid-February is when we discovered that, oh my God, every time we run an analytics query, it's costing us $1.
Oh, right. Yes. Exactly. So the second place where it could have gone wrong is updating the mobile app, because once you ship it to Apple and Google, even if you create a new version like the next day to fix the bug, there will still be users who got the wrong version and didn't update the new ones. And there will be people for whom it's broken. And there is no way for us to message those users that they need to upgrade or something.
On that one, I would say we did cut a few corners and we said, fine, if it is broken for like a day or two for existing users, that's okay. But the solution we ended up with is not broken. But if it was broken for a day or two, we would have been okay with that, which is a risk that a big company will not take, basically.
Right, yeah. All right, so this was a almost single topic episode. I think it was like 1.2 topics, because we had this discussion about the weekly updates, which we will not have next time. And what's the preview of our next episode, Arnab?
Yeah, so along with this, we have also been fighting with LLM bots. Ilya, actually, can you tell us how many requests we got yesterday, just over one day?
Oh my God, 2 million requests. And 1 million of those requests came from just one bot disguising itself as a browser.
Yeah, so we are getting an insane number of like LLM-ish bot requests on our website. We don't want to disable just outright, because we are seeing some benefits. I think a couple of weeks ago, I shared on LinkedIn and maybe Blue Sky that if you ask Perplexity, like what are the best podcast apps with transcripts, Metacast is number one.
Of course. Perplexity knows its stuff.
Yeah. So we don't want to outright disable these things, but it does cost a lot, because these pages, like the podcast pages and episode pages, they're dynamic pages. There's dynamic information coming from the database. So we had to do a lot of work on caching and all of that over the last few weeks. While doing all this is the topic of the next episode. We'll talk about why we also decided to bring in We had some ideas of like someday in the future, we'll do a redesign with new logos and colors and all in the website and a minimal one in the app. We decided to bite that bullet and do all of this together in one bundle that released yesterday? Like Tuesday, May 6th. And as soon as Apple and Google reviews the next 1.19 version, it'll be live in the app also.
By the time this episode comes out, you will see actually the new logo, the new app icon. Oh my God, I'm terrified of people complaining about the app icon. It's because it is very different.
It is very different. Yeah, we'll see. But we are a small company, so we are okay with breaking stuff, moving fast. Let's see. Yeah, we'll talk about the rebrand, right? What kicked off that rebrand and why we decided to do it right now versus later in the next episode.
Yeah, and hopefully we actually get Mark, who is a friend of mine who actually did this work for us on a pro bono basis, which is really cool. The design and the logo and all of that. Yeah, we will see if we can get him to join the podcast and actually talk about this, because when he and I talked about the new logo, I mean, you will see it's like this Metacast in double braces, right? It's so simple. It's incredibly simple. And there are no fancy graphics. There is just so much thought that goes in there, so much insight. Yeah, so I really want Mark to talk about that, not us. So we'll hopefully get him on the call.
And I think you and I, we are both like on our own, we would not have done a project like Rebrand. We would not have prioritized it. Two things led to it. One, we had to do caching and massively change how the website works anyway because of the LLM bots. And two, Mark sent us those designs. You shared it with me and we were like sold. Yeah. Okay. At least the logo and the colors, let's do it immediately. Because I don't know if listeners will agree. If you don't send us your feedback, but we thought it was very catchy, unique, and it helps build brand kind of recognition, even at our small scale, like immediately.
Right. Yeah. Oh, the thing that I found really interesting, it's a bit of an aside. When I was working on a website previously or on an app on some of the things that require design, I would be like, moving pixels around, agonizing over margins and all of that, right? Like colors, the font sizes. So now I just had the Figma file. All I had to do was copy from the Figma file, basically like redo the visual into the actual thing in React. And it's so much easier. I felt like the proverbial code monkey that takes the spec and just like copies it. And it felt so liberating because also I wasn't feeling super well, like physically and mentally also. So I didn't have to think.
Did you use Figma has those like the dev tools now where you can just copy the code?
No.
So I tried it with Flutter once or twice too. It generates stuff that looks like that design, but the code is not what I would write like in a million years with my hands. It's just bizarre way of like too much verbosity, too much duplication of stuff. So I decided to I would take it from Figma, like generate it with the Flutter code that does, but then basically just take that as an inspiration and rewrite the whole thing.
Here, there was nothing special. I just had to arrange pixels in the right way. But I use ChatGPT extensively. I'm like, so I have this grid. It needs to be 2x4. Give me the skeleton, right? And then it gives me the skeleton because of all the Tailwind classes. And then I just refactor what it gave me. And so I do use ChatGPT extensively, but not Figma stuff. All right, so let's wrap this up with our traditional recommendations for what we are. By the way, we're also doing this in a weekly podcast, right? We recommend just one episode each. But on these larger episodes, we take a little bit more freedom and we can actually go for another 10 minutes probably about this. So Arnab, what are your things that you've been listening to, reading, watching recently?
We're not going to talk about the weekly episodes in depth in this episode, but we started with that and we went for a good 5 minutes in there, I think. So I wouldn't rehash all of that, but I would say I am really enjoying those quick 10-minute weekly updates on what we're working on, what the problems we're facing, and also what we're delivering. Especially the must be within 30 seconds, one recommendation per week segment.
You mean you're listening to our own episodes? That's what you're doing?
Yeah, and I'm enjoying that.
Don't you find this therapeutic? Because I do.
Yeah. And I think it might be fun, maybe 3 months down the line, just picking up one of those episodes and playing it to see what were we doing 5 months ago on this week. Yeah. So those episodes, if you haven't heard them, give it a listen. They won't take more than 10 minutes. And if you use our speed controls, you can maximize it to 2x and cut it to 5 minutes. So yeah.
Is it all?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot more things because, like, remember we had this episode, I think it was 7.5, where we ended up talking about Sandman and other things for like an hour.
We made it a different name.
We had to break it out into a separate episode. I think it was 7.5 because it was like 1 extra hour. It was like a bonus episode that we accidentally recorded.
For our listeners, let me try to recap this and then you help Ilya. So in the beginning of this podcast, we were very much focused on like, these are the topics we're going to talk about. But over the first few episodes, what we noticed is we were kind of all over the place, rambling around topics and all that. And we liked that flow when we were listening to it. We liked it. So we decided to like kind of double down on it. So then by the time we were sitting down to record episode 7, which had a very focused theme of like, we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z, we ended up like talking an hour and a half about like Sandman comics and movies and stuff like that. And so we were like, it's not fair to like launch this and all these other topics. So we just make a 7.5. We had a name for it. I'm forgetting what the name of the episode is.
It was like Bonusode or something. We were playing with those names. Yeah. I'm going to launch into like a long list of recommendations now. And you contribute because I think some of that is inspired by you for sure. So I have finally watched Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Both trilogies. So 6 movies total with my son. If it wasn't for my son, I wouldn't have watched this. By the time this episode comes out, he will have turned 13. So we watched Star Wars together, we watched Harry Potter together, and then we watched Lord of the Rings. And surprisingly, I actually enjoyed it so much. I remember when it came out 20 years ago. I was in my early 20s. Everybody was watching Lord of the Rings. I thought fantasy was for kids, and I just like, why would I watch this? Same with Harry Potter. Like, I didn't watch Harry Potter until last year. And also I did watch Star Wars until last year, or maybe until 2023. But now with my son, we sat down, we watched it, and we were like, oh my God, this movie is actually very good. And my son is now a big fan of Orlando Bloom, so we are going to watch the Pirates of the Caribbean too now.
Right. On that topic, I'm not a super big fan of Star Wars. Because by the time I watched the episodes 1, 2, 3, which came out later, they were very cheesy, I think, in my opinion. And I watched them first because of the chronological order. So I'm not a super big fan of Star Wars, but I did watch Andor season 1 recently. Really liked it. It's more about politics and character building and all that. Loved it. Season 2 just started. I haven't liked it as much because it feels more like the Star Wars, like pew pew, TIE fighters and all that, just going around. More actiony than politics and intrigue. But let's see where the season goes. Yeah.
So I've been listening to a lot of quote-unquote podcasts in Telegram channels. Just for people who live in their American islands on that side of the world. In the Russian-speaking world, Telegram is extremely popular. It's probably the main social media right now. People still use Instagram, but Instagram is banned in the country. So a lot of like professional discussions and content-heavy discussions, they happen in Telegram. So Telegram has channels. And I've been given access to a private channel. It's actually like a course that somebody charges for, and she gifted it to me, and so I can access that channel. And she just records 20, 30-minute long audio notes and sends them to the Telegram channel. So it's essentially like a podcast, but in a sort of different technical implementation, right? Instead of an RSS feed and a podcast app, you have it in the Telegram channel. So imagine like a WhatsApp chat, and you have like 30-minute long messages in there. And just imagine how painful it is.
I know you built something like this earlier. Have you talked to her about like, because Telegram has bots, you could write a bot that extracts those messages and creates a podcast like RSS feed and publishes it as a public feed.
So if everybody's in Telegram anyway, why would you do that? And the thing is, it's interesting, when you talk to people who are in Russia and never lived in the States or elsewhere, when you say podcast, they actually think YouTube videos. Some of those countries, and I think it's probably common somewhere else too, they skipped bank checks, for example. Bank checks were never a thing in Russia. I think in the same way, like audio podcasting somehow just never caught up. And then it went straight to video. And there are actually very few podcasts compared to the States, but they are very like highly produced and all of that. So it's very centralized. And I was wondering actually if it's similar to the culture where everything is centralized back from the Soviet times, probably even before that.
But I have to imagine that in Telegram, like you can't go back to those messages, or you can't find out what they're talking about before listening to it or after. All of the problems that we've tried to solve with Metacast.
you can't even scrub the message easily. And also, when you are playing in your car, for example, you can't pause the message. You have to actually take the phone to pause the message. It's so painful. And the thing is, like, usually what I would do if these are the messages between like me and other people, I would just save it to voice notes in Apple and I would listen from there. But this is a private channel, so it doesn't allow saving the messages. So you can only listen from there. And I'm like, wow, it's just so bad. But to your point, it would have been actually cool if a bot could pick this up, put it into a hosting service that can manage permissions. So people can access that only if they paid for the course, for example, right? Or paid for access for this. Yeah, that experience really sucks, but the content is so good, so I'm listening to this. I guess last thing I'll mention, I've been listening to a lot of Falling in Reverse. It's a band that you've not heard of based on your facial expression. They have 7.5 million listeners on Spotify, so it's pretty big. I first heard them in Florida. They were opening for Avenged Sevenfold in Palm Beach. Usually, you know, when the opening act plays, I usually don't pay attention, right? Because usually those bands aren't so famous and whatever. But this one, I was like, I have to go closer to the stage. So I went to the stage. Actually, I didn't even know who was playing. And I had to look them up. Since then, we've been listening to some of their songs on repeat. So the songs like Popular Monster, Voices in My Head, and Watch the World Burn. So they kind of combine the pop, the metalcore, and rap. Listen to Voices in My Head. You will get what I mean. It's this kind of a bit of rap, a bit of like pop, sort of catchy hook during the chorus. And then he goes into this like metalcore, like screaming thing.
So talking about music discovery, I will mention this. I think a few episodes back on this podcast in our recommendations, I talked about this Netflix show called Chaos, Kaos. This is a modern retelling of the Greek mythology, like Zeus and all of that, and like what's happening. Super fun show. Like Jeff Goldblum plays Zeus in it. And it's a really, really good, like one season show. They didn't renew it. That's Netflix. But anyway, so they had a song that was really catchy. And so I listened to that song, I added it. Then later on, I listened to this KEXP, which is like a indie kind of music, very well-known now channel in Seattle and San Francisco now. So I listened to that. There I found another one of their songs. I didn't relate that it's the same band, but I added this song also to my list and kind of like repeat listening once in a while. The theme of their kind of music is bass guitar riffs, which I really like, with strong female vocals. And I tend to like that kind of music. Then 2 days ago, I was listening to another song and I really like that song. And I was listening to it on repeat. And my daughter said, hey, this is like really famous on TikTok. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Let me go look up. Turns out all these 3 songs over the last 2 months or so that I've been gravitated towards from the same band called Ya Ya Yas. The first one was Sacrilege, which is kind of goes with the Greek mythology kind of theme. The latest one that I heard was Maps. Apparently it's huge in TikTok. I'm not big into TikTok. So I've been enjoying that band quite a lot recently.
It's actually interesting how the popular culture sometimes picks up some of the older songs. Like I was wearing my Metallica t-shirt and I was at a coffee shop or something in Florida. And the girl behind the counter was like, oh, like I'm a big Metallica fan because of Master of Puppets on Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah.
That's the oldest song she knows. And then I'm like, oh, interesting. And I remember I was in the shop and somebody was wearing a t-shirt. I think it was Iron Maiden with that monster that I think they called Eddie. And I was like, are you an Iron Maiden fan? And she's like, no, I just like the picture.
On that, yeah, totally. Like I am one of those, like you said, the barista, right? I discovered through that same Stranger, what was it?
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, yes. I'm even forgetting the name now. But the song Running Up the Hill by Kate Bush, I found through that show. I didn't know it was like from 1970s and a big hit song.
It was a very old song which got actually popularized by Placebo. You should listen to the Placebo version. Either in the 90s or the 2000s. So actually, I think it's pretty big from Placebo. He did it really, really well. But then it started playing all of a sudden, like all over the place. Like any coffee shop you enter, I think it was like 2018, 2019 or so, because I was still in Seattle. It was pre-COVID, I think. It was like just everywhere. Also, that's how I learned about the original, that the Placebo also covered it.
That song, actually, I have a playlist of about 8-9 songs for tennis matches. Like when I'm driving to a match, I play those songs. This is one of the like regulars in there, Running Up the Hill. Really love that track, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. And we have 7 seconds before it hits 1 hour. So let's say goodbye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.